Hello everybody, welcome to Chess for Beginners, a new series for people who'd like to learn the royal game, a game that has captivated tens of millions of people around the world. And I'm here today with my niece, Sally Cragen, and her son, Christopher, and we're going to learn chess. It's a game that actually is easy to learn, and we're going to learn right now with Christopher, who has not played the game of chess. But we're going to learn it right now, Christopher. Christopher, I want first you to look at this. This is, you know what this is? This is your battlefield. This is your playing field. You play on a chess board. And this is a board that consists of 64 squares. You see how each of these are squares? And there are 64 of them. Can you count up to 64? Well, we have a board 8 by 8. And this is very important to learn, Christopher. You see these rows of squares that go across, that go up the board, across? You know what those are called? It's very important to learn this term. These are called ranks. These are called ranks in chess. Now, look at these squares that go up and down, Christopher. You see these rows? There's 8 rows that go up and down the board. You know what those are called? Those are called files. So that's what you have to remember. On a chessboard, you have ranks that go across, they go horizontally. That's a big word for you, horizontally. Or they also go vertically, another big word for you. They go up and down. They're called files. Now, let's learn about these chessmen. I'm going to hold up the most important piece in the game of chess. This. You know what this piece is called?
What's that called?
What? You have a name for this? Yes, you have one too. This is a king. What color is this, Christopher?
White.
White, yes. And this is a white king. And I'm going to put, and you have one too, all right? I'm going to put my white, and you have a black king. Well, I'm going to put my white king on this square right here. Now I want you to put your black king opposite me at the other end of the board. Ooh. Where does that black king? Mine is here. Where would you put your black king? Put that black king down on the board.
Can you put it
down? Can you put it right here?
Well done.
Your black king is opposite my white king. And that's the proper place for the king. Now, that's your most important piece. But it's not your most powerful piece. It's not your strongest piece. I'm going to dig up now. I'm going to actually I'm going to take one of your pieces. And I'm going to hold this piece up. You know what this piece is called? I'll tell you. It's called the queen. I've got your white queen, and I'm going to, okay?
Bring the piece into the camera.
Okay. I'm going to show you the white queen. You see that white queen? Now, I'm going to place this white queen. Watch where I place it. I'm going to place it on this square, and it's a white square. So remember this, Christopher. You always put well, that's the black king. This is the white queen. I put the white queen on a white square. A white square. I'm going to give you a black queen. I want you to put that black queen opposite that white queen. Where does that go? Yes. You put it opposite this white queen. What color? Do you know what color that is? Is that a white square? No, that's not a white square.
That's a white square.
That's a white square. That's a white square. This is a black queen, and it goes on either a black square or a dark square. It has to be dark in color. That's how you remember what square you put the queen on. The queen always goes on her own color, on her color. White queen on white square, black queen on black square or a dark square. Okay, now we have the most powerful piece. This is the most important piece, the king. But now let's talk about the other pieces. I'm going to hold up now for you. I'm going to take from the white. And you see what these pieces are? You have, how many do you have of them? How many do you have? Look at these pieces. Can you count? How many do we have here?
1, 2.
2. You have 2 of these. And these are called rooks. This is a rook. And I have 2 of them. You said I have 2. And I'm going to put them on the corners. They go on the corners. Now, can I give you 2 rooks? Can you put down the 2 rooks on your corners over here? On the corners now, opposite this rook,
Opposite, remember? Right
Put
in
it
the
opposite.
corner.
on the corner.
There's one.
And here, this is too far, I'll put it on the corner right over here. So now we have put the rooks on the board, and now we're going to go to the next piece. Now let's go to the next piece. We're going to put now what goes next to the rooks. And I'm going to go from here, take these two, and these, what are these? What do they look like? Do they look like anything you know? This is actually the head of a horse. This is a horse's head. But we don't call them a horse, or horsies. That's baby talk. Because in chess, real chess players call these knights. Can you say knights? Say knights.
Are those knights?
They're knights. We're
They
gonna put the one next to this
A
rook
day.
and one next to this rook. Now I'm gonna give you your knights. Where are you gonna put those knights? You're gonna put your knights next to this rook. Put one knight here next to that rook,
And that one
and this
goes-
one goes next to. I'm gonna take this one here and put it right next to this rook. All right. So far we have actually. Oh, we have some. Do we have some empty squares here? I think I see two empty squares, Christopher. And now we're down to these pieces. And these pieces are called bishops. We have two bishops. Now I'm going to take your white ones, and I'm going to put these two bishops, one next to the knight, and the other one next to this knight. Now I'm going to ask you a
That's
question.
a day.
Yes, that's a knight. But I'm going to ask you a question now. See if you can answer this question. You see this knight, this bishop here? This is a bishop. What color square did I put that bishop on? What color is that? Do you know what color that is?
Day.
Well, that's green. It's a dark color. So I have one bishop which is on a dark colored square. How about the color of this square? Is that also dark? Is that a dark square?
That is white.
It's white, yes.
And
So
black.
then we have a black, dark square. It could be black. The square could be black.
That's black too.
Yes. But you see, we have two bishops. One is on a dark square, and the other one is on a light square. And I'm going to put the other two bishops the same way.
Here they
So
go.
here they go.
Last ones.
Now, Christopher, here's something very important to learn in chess. You see all of these? You know what these are called in chess? They're called pieces. These are chess pieces. But now I'm going to show you something which are not properly called chess pieces. It's this. You know what this is?
What's that?
This is a pawn.
And that's the one.
And if you give me that pawn, I'm going to place the pawns.
Oh, another pawn.
Oh, yes, I need that pawn. I need all the pawns you have, and I'm going to put them right in front of the pieces. Because the pawns, what did I tell you? The pawns are not pieces. The pawns and the pieces
That's a
together,
piece.
you know what they're called?
That's the pieces.
Yeah, these are the pieces. You're right, absolutely. These are the pieces.
And that's another piece.
Those are also the pieces.
That's right.
But you know what the pieces and the pawns together are called? They're called chessmen. All together, they're called chessmen. But you can't call pawns pieces.
It's going in and that's
And can I put my pawn, these black
That's a
pawns in
knight.
front?
Here.
Okay,
That's right. That's a knight.
right. So,
And that's the day.
Christopher, you know what we have
That's
now?
the
Look
day.
at the board, and I will tell you right now that we have the starting position of the game of chess. Once you learn where the pieces go, on what squares they are, you're ready to start the game. So,
Can we, why don't you ask Uncle George?
you have any questions for me? Do you have any
does.
questions for
He
me?
does. Can you ask Uncle George?
Ask me any question you want.
I can't.
You can't? What if I ask you a question? I'm going to ask you a question. Can you tell me, can you point to the black queen? Where is the black queen? Not the king, black. Show me the black king. Where is it? The black queen, not the black king.
Where's
This is the black king, which has a cross, by the way. You see this little cross? That makes it the king. But who stands next to the black king?
Eggs.
Well, what is this? I'm going to lift this piece up.
What's that?
What's that? What's that piece? You know what that's called? That's a queen.
That's the queen.
Now, all you have to do is answer my question. What color is that black queen on? What color is that? You know the color?
White.
Is that white?
No.
No. What color is that?
Just 3.
It's green. And is green a light color or a dark color? Is it light, like this, or is it dark?
That's dark.
It is dark. So remember now, black queen on dark square,
And the
and the black king goes on a light square, or a white color, cream colored square. And this queen here, what color does this queen stand on? Where is this queen standing? What color is that square?
white dot.
White. And that's all you need to do, because I've taught chess to youngsters who are older than you, much older than you, and they always get it mixed up. I will come, and at the start of the class, and they will have the starting position like this. Is this correct? Is this the right way? Yes or no? You think that's correct? I don't think it is, because the white queen now is on a dark square. I don't want it on a dark square. I want the white queen on a white square. You know it's right when the queen is on white. You remember that? White queen on white, black queen on black. So I think we have learned quite a bit now as far as what the pieces are called. Shall we review, or do we know already what these pieces are called? These are your pieces. And what are these? Just one last question. What are these called?
One pot. One
pawn?
pawn.
Do you know how to count? How many pawns do you have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8 pawns. You have 8 pawns.
One king and 2 kings.
Yes, one king here, one king here. So this is the start of the game. These are your pieces. These are your pawns. And now you're ready to start the game. And we're going to learn that in the next segment of how to open a chess game. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've learned a lot as far as how these pieces are called and where they stand at the beginning of the game. Thank you very much, Sally, and thank you very much, Christopher, for learning the names of the pieces and the pawns. We'll do this again, and we'll start playing. Thank you again. Welcome back to our chess show. I'm here, George Marajanian, Program Director for the Wachusett Chess Club, which meets every Wednesday night at the McKay Campus School at Fitchburg State College. And with me is Martin Lane of Lunenburg, one of the most active and strongest players in Northwestern County. And Martin and I are going to present to you today how these pieces move. We learned last time what the pieces were called for those beginners, but now we're ready to move these pieces and to learn how they move. So Martin, we've got here the demonstration board, which is very helpful to us. White to move first. I'd like to learn how these pawns move. I see these pawns placed on the second rank. So how are we going to move these pawns?
Well, the first question is, does black ever move first?
I don't believe so.
No, so it's always white moves first.
So white moves first.
Okay.
So?
Well, the pawns have, on their first move, every pawn has the option of moving 1 or 2 squares forward.
So there's a choice here.
Or there's a choice, but it's only for the first move. Thereafter, it can only move 1 square forward at a time. Pawn can never move backwards.
Or sideways.
Or sideways.
Right.
It can't move
And
along
to
the
any adjacent
rank here.
square.
Right. It does have the option of capturing one of the opponent's pieces, but only if that piece is diagonally in front of it, never if it's directly in front.
I see. So this pawn blocks this pawn from being captured.
Right.
But this pawn could capture a pawn which is diagonally in front of it.
Right.
Okay. So let me make this, as you said now, any of these pawns, when they're moving for the first time, can move 1 or 2 squares.
Right.
I think, given a choice, I think I would move it 2 squares. Would it make sense to move it 2 squares?
Sure, it's very common.
All right, now it's black's turn. What would you recommend for black?
What's good for white is good for black for the same reasons.
All right, so you're saying that black actually should play his e-pawn. I see again, these letters here, Martin, I notice are actually placed at the bottom of the files. So I assume that this is the A file, B file, C file, and this has to be the A pawn, B pawn, C pawn, D pawn, etc.
Right.
So I move my E pawn to this E5 square. All right, so we've moved the pawns here. Now it's time to bring a new piece. Again, a piece. Now pawns are not pieces.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
All right, so I like to, it should get these pieces into play, Martin. So what would you recommend here for white?
Well, by moving the pawn, he's opened up space for a line for his bishop. If he wishes, bishops move diagonally. They can move forward. Unlike the pawns, they can move forward and backward,
Yes.
left or right.
Aha. Okay.
That's one option. There's
And
the knight.
the knight, how does this
Now,
knight
the
move?
knight, some people describe it as an L move, 2 squares forward and 1 square to the side.
I see an L, yes.
Or
I
some people describe it as 1 move straight forward and 1 move diagonally. It gets you to the same place. This enables, the knight could go here, here, or here.
Yeah, each way I see an L. I see, for example, a backward L. This is an upside down L. This is also an upside. So yes, I see the L shape that you're showing.
Right.
I also see something unique
Right.
about the knight.
Right. The knight has the unique feature of being able to hop over
Yes.
a piece to a free square.
To get to that square, we had to hop over our own
Right.
own pawn here.
Yeah, you can never have 2 pieces on a single square. It always has to move to an empty
piece
square.
per square. Okay. So, and another feature of the knight that I see, besides hopping, and it's the only piece that can do that, is hop over,
Right.
jump over its own piece. I see that when a knight, from its starting square, the color of his square, is always going to land on the opposite color square. So we went from a dark square, we hopped over, we went this way, we landed on a white square. So we know that that is the correct move when we're alternating the colors
Right.
from light to dark to light to dark. All right, so you're telling me that's how the knight moves, and I assume that if I make a black move here, I can do the same thing over here.
Sure.
Because if I remember correctly, Martin, this knight which moved here on the second move, if it were white's move again, could that knight take this pawn?
Sure, unlike pawns, which can only capture diagonally in front of them, pieces, these men down here, the pieces can only capture pieces that occupy a square that it can get to.
I see.
And so, yes, if it was white's move, white could capture the pawn. Simply, when you capture something, you take the piece off the board.
You remove the piece from the board,
Right.
and then the piece that actually captured
Occupies that
occupies
space.
the square that the piece or pawn rested on. Okay, well, I understand that, Martin. Now, it would seem to me that actually, if it's black's turn, as it is, black would have to do something about defending that pawn. What can we do, Martin? You told me that the bishops move along the diagonals.
Right.
I have this bishop which I've opened up to come out, and could I bring my bishop here to this square, d6, to protect that pawn? It looks
Well-
like I'm defending the
Well,
pawn.
it defends the pawn. It's a legal move. This is how the bishop moves. So that's one option. The question is whether or not that's a good move.
Is that a
And
good move to you?
I don't. The only thing it accomplishes is that it defends this pawn, and it does get the bishop out. But it blocks in this particular pawn. This pawn now can't go forward.
I
It can't
see.
go past. And by blocking that pawn, it restricts the movement of the queen here, and it restricts the movement of this bishop. And so that's probably not the best idea.
So, Martin, I think what you're telling me is that in chess, the opening moves, every move you make has both advantages and disadvantages.
Right. You need to think in terms of pluses and minuses. There's always a trade-off.
Okay, so you've shown to me that this bishop d6, defending this pawn is not a good move because it actually blocks this pawn, prohibits this pawn from moving and opening up this diagonal for this bishop to come out. So, what would be a better move to defend this pawn? I can see how I can defend that pawn another way. Could I actually just advance this pawn one square and defend this pawn this way?
Well, again, it accomplishes what you want to do, and that is to defend this pawn.
Yes, I
So
want
that-
to defend that
so
pawn.
that's the plus.
That's the plus side. But
The-
there's a negative side to this?
Well, this has a couple of negatives. First of all, it now takes, by occupying this square, it takes away a future space for that knight.
I'm depriving this knight of its natural
It-
square?
Right. And it also blocks this diagonal in
blocked
case you
my
want to
queen.
use that.
Well, that doesn't look good.
It's not good because it's not necessary.
All right,
That's,
so I'll take that move back.
Right, because there are other options. There are 2 other options.
Well, show me some other options here that I have.
This would be one. This is probably better than the other pawn. It does the same thing. It protects it. But here again,
Yeah,
it
this
does.
is- yeah.
And it opens up a diagonal. It doesn't
Yes.
restrict. It's better than this move.
Right. But does it have a
But
drawback?
The drawback is that it doesn't get a piece into play. There's no, if the other option is to
Oh.
play your knight here, which then protects this pawn. It gets a piece into play. It attacks these two squares while protecting that.
So
And-
that looks better.
So-
if I can defend and develop at the same time,
Right.
That's superior to
Right.
just wasting
Yeah,
time with
you're
the pawn
getting,
move.
right. It has more benefits than just simply defending.
Okay, this seems logical to me, Martin. It's White's turn. Now what would you recommend? In fact, you talked about this bishop
Right.
moving along the diagonal. Can I bring this bishop out now?
Sure. This bishop,
But I have choices where I can bring it.
right? You could. You,
Could I
you
bring it
have,
there?
You have what? Hypothetically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible squares. This, of course, just loses the bishop because the pawn
yeah,
could take it.
exactly. I wouldn't want to lose the bishop.
You could only move it one square, and that does get it out.
That develops the piece.
But
gets
it
into
also
play.
it does get it into play. But it doesn't really do anything there.
It looks passive to me.
It is. It's just simply sitting there. It doesn't.
Well, how about actually we brought it to this square?
Well, this again. If now it blocks, we saw that problem
Oh.
here. Does the same thing. It blocks that pawn. It
So
gets
that
in its
doesn't look
way.
good.
So that's not necessary. So the two really reasonably good squares would be either come here,
Yes.
which attacks. This is a pawn that's protected only once by the king.
Oh, I
And
like
so,
this.
So this is one, and then the other would be this, which threatens an exchange here. If I were to take that knight, then I'm removing that defender.
Okay.
And I could take that pawn. So these would be the two recommended moves.
So
this
those-
does one other thing. Moving the bishop out prepares castling, which we can talk about later. So.
Okay. Oh, I'd like to learn about that. So actually, this looks like I like this move because I like the idea of actually bearing down at this. Is this a weak square for
Well,
black?
I would consider it weak because it's only protected by the king. It's all the other pawns are protected by other pieces. The king, because because he can't go into check, he's we don't want to make him be a target.
Right.
Yes, it becomes vulnerable, and there's a sort of another feature you want to look at in terms of the diagonal here. If this knight moves to here, then it's also striking that. And the queen can move out, and is also White is now in a position he can bring a lot of pressure to bear on that square.
All right. It's black's turn. Black's move here. Could black actually play his bishop to this square for the same reason that white played this bishop here bearing down here? If black were to play the bishop to c5, I see also black threatening down at this
Right, he's
pawn, which
returning
looks
the
weak.
threat. Right.
So actually, it looks like it's a reciprocal action here as far as developing this piece
Right.
and also attacking. Of course, this is defended, though.
Right.
All right, so this looks logical to me. How would you continue, Martin?
Well, we talked about castling as a possibility.
All right. So what is castling?
Well, castling is a move by the king where the king moves 2 spaces to one side,
Oh, so you
and
move,
the rook
so you move
goes
the
along.
king 2 squares toward the rook.
towards the rook, and it can go either to the queen side or the king side. But the king moves 2 squares to the side, and the rook then goes immediately
On the other side of
on
the
the other
king.
side. And there are a couple of rules that govern it.
What are the rules that govern this? We have this position.
Right.
And
And
it's
the first thing
what
is
what are the rules
that
that
neither
govern?
one of these pieces have moved.
We have moved the king. We have moved this rook.
There's nothing in between. Both the bishop and the knight are out, so they're
All right.
gone. These squares are open.
So if these squares are empty,
Right. The king is not in check. The
Right.
king is not attacked. You can't castle out of check. So the king
Okay.
is not attacked, and he can't castle across check. In other words, if this pawn were here,
Oh, I see. If this
we're
pawn were
not
not here.
the bishop is now attacking his square.
that is, we couldn't move this king over here because
Because-
we couldn't put ourselves into,
Right, into
a
check.
check, which
So-
check means to attack the king.
Right. That's called check.
All right, so
And-
we could never put ourselves in check.
Check, no.
All right, so that's only because if that pawn were not
Right.
there. But with the pawn there, we have something blocking this diagonal. So
Right.
you're saying now castling, which is a very unique move because it's the only time in the game that you can move 2 pieces at the same time.
Right.
So can we do that?
Sure.
Let's do that. Let's castle.
The only time the king's
All right, so we're castled.
And it accomplishes, so those are the rules, and it accomplishes a couple things. First of all, it gets the king into a safe place. This is a relatively safe place. He's
Yes.
behind his pawns. He's got the rook next to him.
Right.
The
Okay.
rook gets centered.
So it's very important to get the king into safety.
Right.
And also with the rook now, by bringing the rook actually toward the center,
It's into play.
we're getting getting into play now.
Right.
Because in the corner, it's out of play.
Right.
So we're actually going to activate this rook. All right. Now see, black can't do the same thing because black actually has this knight. Now, if we could bring this knight out, let's bring this knight out so we can actually threaten the same thing. We'll bring the knight, develop this piece here to f6, and now we're getting ready to castle and put our king into a safe place and get our rook activated. So also, we're threatening something here too. What can we do here? What are we threatening, by the way, Martin, by playing this knight here?
By playing the knight there, we're threatening to take this pawn, because this pawn is undefended.
Okay. Now, can we defend that?
A couple of different ways. Again, there's the knight move
Right.
here. Now, this pawn move makes some sense,
I
because
see.
it opens up this diagonal, and it protects the pawn,
Right.
and the queen is open.
Okay.
You can do that.
All right, so there actually we have different ways to defend that pawn.
Right.
Now, this piece here, our strongest piece, the queen, could this queen be used to defend that pawn?
Sure.
And how does the queen move?
Well, the queen moves in any direction, any number of open spaces. So it could, from here, protect the pawn this way or this way if it wanted to.
So this looks like actually the queen has the moves of both the rook and the bishop, because
Right.
you say it can move along the diagonal,
Right.
but it also can move as a rook
Right.
along the rank or the file, in the case if there were a blank square here.
Right.
So a rook, I mean the queen is your strongest piece.
Right.
So, but is it good to actually move the queen early in the game? I mean, if we came here to bring the queen to e2 to defend that, is that good, or is there something better? I mean, this is how a queen moves.
Right, that's how the queen moves,
But
but
is it-
again, it's not necessarily a good move. The problem with moving such a powerful piece
Right.
early in the game is that it can also become a target.
Okay. So are you recommending actually between two moves here? You mentioned the knight here, knight to c3,
Right.
or d3. I see
Yeah,
two.
I
I see
would-
two moves you're recommending.
Yeah, and I think I would go with this.
Okay.
Just for
All right. So on d3, okay, d3. We're playing d3, and you're opening up this diagonal,
Right.
and you have a plan. You must have in chess. You have to have a plan. You
Right.
can't play. You can't play aimlessly. Now, black's turn. Black actually could castle.
Sure.
Let's castle. I mean, if you could do it, black should be able to do it also. All right. So let's go here. We'll play here. So now, what would you recommend here?
Well, now
So-
now there's lots of different. I mean, let's take a look at the position. Look, the bishop is
Right.
pointing down here. The knight is coming down here. There's a queen possibility. The bishop.
All
So
right.
everything is kind of pointing that way.
Yes, we're actually aiming toward the castled king
Right.
position.
Right. So I need to come up with something that's gonna.
Well, it looks like you have to develop another piece. Get another
I
piece
should.
in play.
I should. And I really.
Yes.
I might play out to here, pinning this knight against the queen.
Is this what it's called when when you attack
right.
the
When there's a lesser piece in front of
Oh, I
a more
see.
powerful piece, and so this.
So this knight can't move because
Well, he can, but he'll
again, these are the questions that have to be asked: to take or not to take. In chess, it's always difficult to know whether it's good to retreat or to capture.
Right.
And we're going to learn in the next session how we should continue in a position like this, and how one should play an opening chess game correctly, because it's how you play the opening that's going to lead to the middle game, which then, if you're lucky enough, will lead to the end game, either to victory or defeat. And we're going to learn that in the next session in Chess for Beginners.